Hey, what's up, guys? This is CG with Politics Mob, and this is the first installment of Politics Explained. Every video in the PE series is going to take a common political word or idea and break it down to its core concepts. Today, we're talking about socialism. By the end of this video, everyone should be able to answer this question. Am I a socialist? The answer might surprise you. Socialism gets tossed out in political debates and discussion all the time.
Right, here comes socialism.
There are many things that we owe in our welfare state to the whole ideas of socialism.
The problem with socialism is eventually you run out of other people's money.
But what does socialism actually mean? Now, you can Google it, obviously. You'll get a basic definition, but that won't give you a basic understanding. Socialism describes social and economic systems that advocate for the public or social ownership over the means of production. However, socialism also describes political movements and theories that are associated with that line of thinking. There are actually many different types of socialism, including revolutionary socialism, market socialism, non-market socialism, state socialism, libertarian socialism, democratic socialism, authoritarian socialism, and others. It's really important to note that you will not find a definition of socialism that adequately defines all the different types at once, because they're not the same. This is why a basic understanding of what socialism actually is becomes really necessary. Now, socialism thinking and ideas dates back as far as the Middle Ages, and the first significant socialist movements date back to the 1820s and 30s. These movements were a response to the Industrial Revolution, because the aftermath of the Industrial Revolution left a wide gap between the haves and the have-nots. The disparity between the top and the bottom was the worst it had ever been in human history. This book, The Communist Manifesto by Marx and Engels, was also a response to the Industrial Revolution and the inequity that they saw in society. Now, communism and socialism are not the same thing. However, it does have to be stated that this book had a very influential role in furthering socialist thought and socialist movements. That's because at its core, socialism, like communism, is a critique of capitalism and free markets. Karl Marx himself even felt that socialism was the necessary bridge while a capitalist society transitioned to a communist society. This is part of the reason why socialism and communism are so often confused. But other than Karl Marx's opinion of socialism being a vehicle for a capitalist society to reach communism, and the fact that both ideologies are critiques of capitalism, those are about the only two things that socialism and communism actually have in common. So now we need to talk about the actual critique on capitalism that socialism offers. Capitalism, at its core, has a fundamental goal of accumulating capital or money. That's the only goal of capitalism, is the accumulation of capital, hence the name. There's no moral standard, there's no moral compass or human element to a free market, nor should there be. That's not what a free market is for. But it has to be said, without that moral component to a free market, without that human element that is involved in the accumulation of capital, you can see what type of things would happen after the Industrial Revolution and afterward. The fundamental goal of socialism is the prosperity and progress of society. So, from a socialist point of view, capital, or the accumulation of capital, is meaningless unless that capital aids in the progression and the overall well-being of society. This is why many people have a negative view of socialism. This is apart from the association with communism. A lot of people have a negative view of socialism and socialist thinking because they view it as the rich giving to the poor, or rather the poor taking from the rich. Basically, the idea is that people that did not work for their goods and services, or did not work to accumulate capital to buy goods and services on their own, still get goods and services because they're given money from the people that did work for those things. That's the negative view of socialism that kind of persists. Right now, you might be thinking of things like food stamps or welfare, or in some cases, aspects of the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. These things are socialism. Socialism is involved. And as such, all of these things deserve our concern, debate, and discussion. But remember, at its core, socialism is concerned with the social or public ownership over the means of production. Following this basic understanding of what socialism is, you'll soon realize that you see socialism in action in the United States of America every single day. That's because the United States and many other countries like it are in fact social democracies. For example, the United States military is by far and away the single largest socialist program in the entire world. It costs nearly $600 billion a year to fund the US military, and that's all from public funds, taxes. It doesn't matter if you're rich or poor. It doesn't matter if you're healthy or sick. It doesn't even matter if you actually paid taxes or not. If you live in the United States of America, you are afforded the protection of the US military. It can't be any other way. The US military is not owned by any one person or any one organization. It's owned by all of us. All of us own the military. And all of us reap the benefits of that ownership. That's socialism. Other commonplace examples of socialism include public schools, highways and roads, public libraries, public beaches and parks, museums, Social Security, yes, welfare and food stamps, also Medicare and Medicaid, also congressional health care. Also, corporate subsidies. So if you work for a company or buy goods from a company that is able to increase its production because it's getting subsidized by the government, that's socialism. Or a few years ago, we had the bailout of banks that were too big to fail. That was also socialism. So you can see that socialism comes in many forms, especially in a social democracy. Some of it's good and some of it's bad. By your own estimation, you might love the military, you might hate Obamacare, you might love that grandma or grandpa gets their Social Security check, but you might hate welfare. You might love some aspects of socialism and you might hate others. But the fact remains, if you live in the United States, you live in a social democracy and you participate in socialism every single day. So the next time you hear something like this,
One of the great lies that's been told about socialism, and you see this all the time, is people say socialism, beautiful idea in theory, but it doesn't work in practice. No, socialism is a shitty idea in theory, and it's an immoral idea in practice.
remember that the question isn't, am I a socialist? The question is, I know I'm a socialist. How much of a socialist am I?